Hi, I'm John SanGiovanni, Coordinator of Elementary Mathematics in Howard County, Maryland, and author of this book, Answers to Your Biggest Questions About Teaching Elementary Mathematics. With me today are my co-authors, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Susie Katt, and I'm the K-2 math coordinator in Lincoln, Nebraska for Lincoln Public Schools.
Hi, I'm Latrenda Knighten, and I'm an elementary content trainer in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
And I'm Gina Rivera, and I'm currently a principal of a pre-K through 5 school in West Hartford, Connecticut.
We worked together as an author team to write this book because, frankly, we had so many questions when we first started teaching math for a couple of years after our first year of teaching math. And honestly, there was nobody there to help us with those answers. We knew that some of you don't have a math coach or don't have access to a math coach, and we felt that it was important to have some of these answers. We put them all in the same place, but as we think about the beginning of a school year, a new year, we thought, well, what's some tips that we might be able to share with you? One thing that we wanted to talk about, or that I wanted to talk about, was our first week of school. Now, often the first week of school is an opportunity to get to know our students, to hear about their summer, to learn about, who they are as people. And we do that sometimes in language arts, but we don't always do that in math. And one thing that I want to share with you is that it's so critically important to know who each and every student is in our math class, to take time to get to know them, to find their strengths so we can build upon those across the year. There might be pressure to find out all the stuff they know so we can fix all the stuff they don't, but that sometimes is a misstep. Students are so much more than data points. They're people that have fears and strengths and dreams, and math is an opportunity to tap into all of that and to move them forward. So take time that first week to do good math tasks, to see how they think about math, to see what they have to say about math, and to listen, to just listen. But there are other questions you might have that first week too, or other ideas. And so I want to ask some of our panelists some of their thoughts. So Susie, something that teachers are always concerned about is, well, and rightfully so, is student behavior, classroom management, for example. What tip would you offer in that area?
Sure. Yeah, that's one of the biggest questions that I know I had as a teacher is how am I going to establish the expectations in my mathematical community? Because I want to have some clear and consistent expectations, but I don't want to greet students on the first day or week of school with a big list of rules that they have to follow, because that's, that might not set the tone of your mathematical community the way that you'd like it to be. So one of the things I think is to start and think about what are some things that you would like to have, that your community, some of those expectations. You want to develop a community that's safe, that's respectful, where students work together and they cooperate, but it's also fun. And so thinking about what are some things that might be important for you to establish. But then maybe, as John was saying, getting students involved in some of those interesting tasks, then maybe have that conversation with students after, and get them involved in a task and then have a conversation. So what are some things that you noticed about that made that task really successful or that helped us? And that students are going to come up with some great ideas. Even young kindergartners can say, hey, we work together, or I respect each other's ideas, or we learn from mistakes. And so those are some kinds of things that you'll want to maybe then start to make a list. And that list is going to be more, I think, what's the word I'm trying to say? More accepted by the whole community if it's something that they create together. So create a list together, and then at the end of that conversation, have students sign that agreement saying, hey, I agree to this because this is going to be important. We are all going to learn together and grow together, and we know we have to keep these rules and kind of expectations in mind. Then one thing, though, that's important to remember is just because if you establish some expectations at the beginning of the year, it doesn't mean that you can't revisit them or change them. You can come back to them. You can, take something off or add to or whatever you need to do. But I think it's really important to have some of those rules and expectations and say, hey, this is how we work together. This is how we're going to learn together. And then you're going to have a successful year.
Yeah, that's great advice, Susie. And it's one of the many questions in this book, answering your biggest questions about elementary mathematics, or more importantly, teaching elementary mathematics. And one more thing that I thought of as you were sharing, Susie, is something that you and I had talked about some time ago when we worked on a book called Productive Math Struggle. And that is making sure that kiddos understand what the rules look like, what they are and what they aren't, and putting it into their own words, because sometimes we use language with them that they may not necessarily be familiar with, right? So helping them know what it means to be responsible, what examples of responsibility are, and well, what are counterexamples for that matter. So Latrenda, there is so much to think about, so much to learn, so much to manage. I mean, it's easy for teachers to get overwhelmed, and really to get overwhelmed quickly. So Latrenda, what advice can you give teachers about building their support network?
Thanks, John. One of the first pieces of advice I would give is to make sure you give yourself a little time for grace and forgiveness, because as John said, you can get a little bit overwhelmed with all of the things that it seems that you must master in that first year. And keep in mind, just as your students are learning, you are learning also. So take time, set some realistic goals, just a few things that you want to work on for those first couple of years. And so spend time working to make those things your own, that you work on with you and your students, and also surround yourself with a support network. As a new teacher, a lot of times you'll find that you'll be assigned a mentor teacher or a lead teacher. If you're lucky, there may be a math coach or someone in your district, like the jobs that John, Susie, and Georgina and I have had in the past. But that's a good piece of support for you. But also there's a lot of support in your peers. You know, there may be someone who's on your grade level or someone who is on a different grade level on your campus or maybe the neighboring campus. And so surround yourself with peers who can support you and who are willing, you know, to listen to your questions, to be your sounding board as you try out new ideas. That's a good thing to think about as well. Take advantage of as many things as you can to learn more about teaching math and how young students learn math as you begin to try different things in your classroom. And you'll find lots of suggestions in our book about some of those organizations that can point you towards those directions, but don't discount that opportunity of just networking with others, learning from others, and asking those questions. And also remember, you may be new, but you have a lot to offer as well. And so don't feel as if you don't have anything to share with someone. So invite others to visit your classroom and you visit their classrooms as well, so that you can learn from each other and you can actually grow together. That would be one of the things I would suggest.
Yeah, Latrina, that's such a good one. And you know, we wrote this book with an angle on helping new math teachers, right? But it's more than just that. You might be new to a school. You might be new to a grade. You might be new to teaching math and you've been teaching reading for 10 years or something like that, right? Moral of the story is no matter who you are, you want to have a support network that you can ask questions about or to, but at the same time, you have great ideas as well. And don't ever be afraid to share those. And so Latrina, that's some really great advice. I think about all this being overwhelmed makes me think about like, how do I take care of myself? Right. And so Gina, do you have any tips for like how you might take care of yourself to teachers as they embark on the new school year?
So one of the things that I tell my new teachers is we do a lot of planning for our students, but you don't always plan for yourself. And I mean, plan for self-care. So like think of your favorite hobby or your favorite thing to do and make sure you plan a little time in the school day to just have a little quiet time, but also plan after school or on weekends to do things for yourself. If I was to go back and think about my first year self, I think I poured myself into teaching and planning and grading and thought I had to have everything on time, but I didn't take good care of myself. But you know, if I really think about it, I planned for everyone else and I never planned for myself. So that would be advice that I would give all new teachers, and plan to do something that you really love, whether it's reading or it's being outside or, you know, a hobby or playing a game. Just make sure you take that time for yourself, because the happier you are, the happier your students will be.
Yeah, that's great advice. Being happy and finding joy in your students and the work. What about you, Susie? Before Latrenda, I want to ask you for how you might take care of yourself. Susie, what would you add to that?
Sure. Yeah, and I was just going to have like John, you just said find the joy, and you know we go into teaching because we love we absolutely love teaching, right? And love the school year. Beginning a school year has so many new beginnings. So just capitalize on those students. They're coming to you for the first time into that grade level. They're excited, and just capitalize on that. Enjoy, laugh with your kids, and just find the happiness throughout your day with those students. And the other thing is I agree with Gina as well, is find time to find the balance, because you have to have a work-life balance. And it might be going for a run in the morning. Like, take time to do that. Don't kind of, say, oh, I don't have time for that today, because you're going to be a better teacher for that if you find that balance. Might even just be going out to a nice dinner, or not having to cook and grabbing takeout and eating it, sitting outside or something. But just have a little downtime, because then you can really focus and put all your energies on that work, and you'll be better for that once you're back into that work. So it's okay. It's okay to not bring a bag home too on the weekends. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's some great advice.
What about that you bring it and then it comes back in the same condition?
That's
so really,
okay.
let's
too,
keep it real.
So you're saying you didn't always open the books when you took them home, Gina. Good information there.
I'm saying
Latrenda,
I might know
you
people
might.
that did that.
of course. Latrenda, I'm sure you are not someone who did that. What else would you say about how we can take care of ourselves?
Well, as I was listening to you guys, I just, one thing that I thought of that always gave me as a young teacher, and it definitely still gives me the joy, is sharing the things that I like with my students as I build that community, and finding time to laugh with my students. And I think Susie mentioned that, Gina mentioned that. Your students, will see you not just as this abstract person who they think, especially young kids who lives in the school building, you are a real person. And in order to have our kids have the joy and wonder and beauty of mathematics, they actually have to have fun doing it, and let them know how much you enjoy learning with them. So definitely find time to laugh with your kids every day.
That is great advice, Latrenda. If we're not laughing, there's something wrong, right? A great teacher I know said, I laugh to keep from crying, but that's another conversation for another day. Gina, last question is for you. You think about building relationships with students and colleagues, and we kind of talked a little bit about that, which is really important, right? But there's also these relationships that we need to build with parents and caregivers. And this can really seem overwhelming, especially with so much to do that first week and so on. Gina, what advice do you have for building relationships with families and caregivers?
So I'm going to circle back to something that you said earlier, is really listening to our families. And so one of the ways you can do that is by getting information, by sending out a survey and really asking them, like, what was your math experience like? How does your child feel about math? How do they best learn math? What are some things that help them, and what are some things that have held them back? I think sending out a survey as part of your welcome letter, because many new teachers send out a welcome letter, that would be a great way to just get some idea about how your families feel about math, because we know a lot of people have very strong feelings. And so if you have that time to connect, you can really help to connect with your families by getting to know where they are. The second thing is, a lot of times early on in the school year, and I wasn't prepared, I'm going to be honest, like that early open house or those meet and greets, they ask, oh, what are we learning in math? So it's important to know the major topics that you're going to teach. You don't have to know the details, but at least know what topics you're going to teach in your grade level, because families do want to know what topics are being taught, including the fluency. We also work on the facts to 20, or we work on the facts to 10. And so being able to say that, or have a quick note card to say, you know what, these are the topics we're going to cover. I find many parents are very interested in knowing that. The third thing I'd say is, parents have a lot of questions on how to help kids at home with math. So if you could give them a couple tips on how you can get them unstuck, that would be super helpful. And in the book, we have some strategies there. But it's really important, because parents, they want their kids to be successful. And if you can send home just a few tips and say, listen, if you do these things, your child will be more successful, it helps them to get less frustrated with the math. And my final thing I'll say about families is communication. Tell them what you're going to communicate about, how often, and how you will communicate with them, because families want to know. And you can't just communicate when things go wrong. I think that's a mistake that a lot of teachers make, is like that first phone call is when they get a first bad test score or behavior. Make sure that first connection is a positive one. I saw John do a really great job on the math test, or I love the way that he engaged in productive struggle and he really persevered on a math task. Those positive phone calls really go a long way. And be attentive to your multilingual families and understand that if they don't understand English, that you're trying to find translation services to communicate with them in their own home language, because we have to remember that our schools are diverse. Many parents are coming and they don't speak the language. So we have to honor all of our families and not forget about our multilingual families. So those are just some of the things that I wish I had known my first year and would have probably created better relationships right from the start if I had known them.
Yeah, those are all really great pieces of advice there, Gina. And as we close this up, the thing that I want to stress with you, the listener, is that well, welcome. You're part of the best profession in the world, and you're not alone. The fact is, you have questions. We all do. And my colleagues and I had lots of questions too. We didn't have somebody to go to. And one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that you and our new colleagues have answers to their biggest questions. That's why we put this together, answering the biggest questions about teaching math. And that could be questions like, how do I make an anchor chart in math? Or how do I teach estimation? Or how can I assess my students? Or, how do I get to know my students? I mean, there's just frankly so many questions about teaching math, and you're not going to answer them all your first year. In fact, we have all been doing this for a really long time. In fact, some of my colleagues a lot longer than me. But what I want to share with you is never stop learning, never stop growing, and never stop moving forward. We wish you a great school year and a long, successful career.
Best of luck.
Best of
Bye-bye.
luck. Have a great school year.
And cut.